This is the third in the series of Brave New World talks that we programmed for the Brighton Digital Festival. The first two have really focused on individuals, so artists kind of taking their first steps online, the things they need to think about, trying to address some of their worries. The second one was a panel of 4 artists who I thought were doing interesting things online. That was last week. And the final one, this one, is really looking more at arts organisations and how social media is affecting the arts landscape, particularly for organisations. And when I started programming these events, I didn't really spend much time thinking about this one. I was like, hey, I'll do it, it'll be fine. I think it will be fine. But when I actually sat down to start planning, I kind of thought, actually, this is a really huge subject, and I could focus on very many different things. I could focus on kind of accessibility, or diversity, or the opportunity for conversation, the opportunity for exchange, for creative participation. All of these things would support a half-hour talk on their own. So what I finally came down to, which is what I always think I'll do, is to do everything. But I'm not going to spend half an hour talking about all of those things. I'm going to try and do it all in half an hour. So this might be a bit of a whistle-stop tour. So this is arts and social media by way of Christmas jumpers. Some of you might have seen my tweet this morning. By way of Christmas jumpers, nursery rhymes, Greek mythology, and a bit of boxing. There's an argument that's been going on for quite a long time now about the value of social media to the arts, and I don't really want to address too much of that. I feel like I might be preaching a little bit to the converted. But there's just 3 things that I really wanted to address very quickly, and just give you some examples of stuff that we've done at Fabrica. The other thing that I thought is, I don't want to make this just a case study about Fabrica, and obviously I'm happy to answer questions, but I wanted to kind of broaden it out from that. So hopefully if this works. Christmas jumper. One of the opportunities that social media offers us is the chance to give our audience the opportunity to create, to participate creatively. And this is something that we did last Christmas, obviously, because I woke up on December the 1st and decided that I really wanted a Fabrica advent calendar. And I'd kind of left it a bit late, clearly. So we just put a call out on Twitter, on Facebook, to our volunteers through email, saying, if you've got an image that you'd like to contribute to our advent calendar, send it to us. And what we did was, for every day during December, during Advent, we put one image up on the front page of our website. So it's really kind of making a slightly alternate exhibition space, which we opened up to anybody that wanted to send an image in. And obviously we got far more than we could actually fit in, so I could have done about 8 advent calendars. And every day we talked about it on Twitter. We talked about who the person was, the image, and drove people to look at the site. I'm planning on doing it again this year, and I might give people a bit more notice. So that's your notice. If you've got an image that you'd like to contribute to our advent calendar, please send it to me. Amazing, Louise Bourgeois. This is just an example of something that we did for International Women's Day, which was earlier this year. And again, it was kind of a last-minute thing, and they stood as International Women's Day. So we did a kind of straw poll in the office, again on Twitter, on Facebook. There was a life drawing class in the gallery that day of who were people's favourite women artists. And we just put together a list during the day, and then we published it on our Posterous site. And it's just a kind of fairly light, playful way of engaging people with the idea of artists and with the organisation. I chose Louise Bourgeois for this because A, that's a brilliant picture, and B, she got the most votes. This is conversation. It's a fairly obvious and quite easy win for arts organisations to have conversations with their audience. I was at a conference in May called Thinking Digital, and one of the presentations was about happiness. And the guy asked the question was, how happy is your brand? So I don't know if you probably can't read this, but I posed that question on Twitter. I said, how happy is your brand? How happy is at Fabrica Gallery's brand? Genuine question. Slightly facetious, to be fair, but it was a genuine question. And actually the responses were really interesting, mostly along the lines of Fabrica isn't a brand and it shouldn't be one, which is fair enough. I think it's anathema to a lot of people, the idea of an arts organisation being a brand. I'm not sure I entirely agree with that, but then it can go too far as well. So this was just a really nice, kind of quite quick, brief conversation that I had with some of our audience, but actually it kind of informed something for me, which was really interesting. And I'm ashamed to say that I wrote a blog post about this. And when I was looking through these screen grabs, I went to the blog post and realised that I'd never actually published it. And it's still sitting on Posterous in draft form. And that was in May, so it's a bit embarrassing. So those are just 3 very quick examples. So it's the creative participation, the conversation, and the opportunity to engage people with ideas. But behind that, there's there's several much bigger things. This is one of them. I'm not a boxing fan, I know nothing about boxing, but what I can tell you is this is July 1921 in Jersey City, and it's a heavyweight title bout between Jack Dempsey, also known as the Manasseh Mauler, and Georges Carpentier, who is a decorated French war hero, and much the crowd's favourite. Jack Dempsey, it was thought, had been a conscientious objector during the war, so in America he wasn't very popular, whereas Georges Carpentier was roundly cheered when he arrived in the ring, probably the last time that a Frenchman got really cheered in America. What's interesting about this is somewhere in that audience is a man called Jack White, I think, who had a telephone, and his telephone was rigged up via a very long wire to a radio transmitter somewhere outside the hall. There were 90,000 people in the audience for this bout, which is incredible to me. 90,000 people. But via the telephone, he was able to broadcast this match, or his description of this fight, I told you it wasn't a boxing bout, to hundreds of thousands of people across America in radio halls. It's the first recorded time that there was a sportscast. He became the first sportscaster. And it's the first recorded time of an event that was happening live, being broadcast to more people than were watching it. That only lasted 4 rounds, which is just as well, because apparently all the equipment blew up shortly afterwards. What's fascinating about that to me is that idea, and what's relevant here, the idea that you can talk to, engage more people online than you can ever get into the gallery is really fascinating. And what's more important about that is, it's more about showing what's behind closed doors. And it allows us to talk about process in a way that we don't necessarily have the opportunity to otherwise. And for us, one of the really important things is to do that, is to talk about process, to show what's happening behind the scenes. I don't think the knockout's in this little bit of film. But actually, what's really amazing, can I just say, But this was filmed in 1921. It's on YouTube for anybody that's a boxing fan to watch. We kind of, I think, forget sometimes just how amazing that is. Because if you are a real boxing fan, 20 years ago you wouldn't have had the opportunity, or very unlikely to have had the opportunity to see this. And now if you've got an internet connection, you can watch it in all its black and white and bloody glory. This is a kind of illustration of something that we did that demonstrates something that was happening behind the scenes. And there are two things that I think are quite important about this. One of the things it really demonstrates is the immediacy of social media. I recorded this on my phone, and it was on YouTube 30 seconds later. And I just happened to be walking through the gallery, and I just thought that's such a great image. It's such an odd and unusual thing. But this is the sort of thing that happens all the time, that our audience generally never gets to see. You saw us on the show. They're ironing out the wrinkles in the bottom of the liner. There's quite a nice bit where it suddenly gets really synchronised. It's like synchronised sweeper. So there's two things. There's that kind of immediacy that you can get something out there really quickly. And also, it's a kind of a demonstration of the idea that actually you can engage people without spending a lot of time and a lot of money doing that. You can just say, that's a really neat thing, that's a really great idea, that's a really great image, I'm just going to put it out there. Technology fail. Okay. A lot of what I'm talking about is kind of broadly applicable to a lot of the arts and possibly to businesses as well. But I wanted to focus on contemporary visual art for a second. That's obviously what we do here. This is an image from a series of work by a Belgian artist called Patrick Guns, I think it's pronounced, who's worked in partnership with one of our partner organisations in Belgium, Kunst as well. And he did this whole series of kind of doctored photographs of demonstrations, so all the placards of people saying no to contemporary art, basically. One of the things that I often find when I talk to people and I say where I work is that their automatic reaction is, oh, I don't like contemporary art, don't understand it, I hate Tracy Emin. Because Tracy, bless her, has been demonised by the media for, she becomes the face of contemporary art in this country. Tracy and Damien Hirst, doesn't matter really which one. And because of the way that contemporary art's often portrayed in the media, that's what people just have that idea of what it is. And actually our experience is if you can get people into the gallery, they go, oh, I don't like contemporary art, but I like this. I like what you do. So what online offers for us, what social media offers for us, is an opportunity to engage people in a different way. So they don't have to come to the gallery. We can lower barriers for people, and we can talk about the work in a different way than we can necessarily if people walk in cold. And I think that's a really powerful thing. It kind of opens so many opportunities. There's a real accessibility issue here as well, because often for whatever reason people physically can't come to the gallery, but we can still engage them with what we're doing. I think that's really crucial. So, I'm having a Carrie Bradshaw moment now. This is the next thing. So what this makes me think is that's all well and good, but what's really happening? What are the wider, deeper opportunities, and why do I sometimes get a bit overexcited? And is it sensible to lay down a challenge to the people that are listening to you? So I'm going to try and answer all those questions. I learned a new word this year, which is my word of the year so far. It was really small down there, sorry about that. But the word is skeuomorph. And a skeuomorph is a term that comes from design, basically. and it's a feature that carries over from one design format to another design format, even though it's no longer necessary or required. So there are some examples there. Spokes on a car tyre. You don't need spokes on a car tyre, but it refers back to something. There's this kind of nostalgia thing of having a dial on your iPhone, or you get a ringtone that sounds like an old-fashioned Bell telephone. And the shutter sound on a digital camera. There is no shutter in your digital camera, it doesn't make a shutter sound, but that sound has been imported. It does still have a function, obviously, because it tells you the picture's been taken, but that could equally be a beep, or a bell, or anything else. It doesn't have to be that shutter sound. So that shutter sound in itself is no longer necessary, but what that does is, it kind of makes people comfortable with the idea of change and the idea of new formats. So one of the things that I'm interested in is how that applies to ideas, and how ideas from one area are transformed to another area and they're unchallenged and unchanged. And I think this happens a lot with arts organisations and social media. I think what happens is people say, in a sense this is where I started my journey, is to say, okay, Fabrica needs to be engaging with social media, so great, we'll go on Twitter and we'll tell people about what time the exhibition opens and that kind of thing. And what I see happening quite a lot is that arts organisations use social media just for marketing. And obviously it has a marketing application. Nobody's going to take away from that. We use it for a certain amount. But what I see a lot of arts organisations is just doing that. They're just using it for marketing. And I kind of feel like that's a horrible, wasted opportunity, because there's a chance to do so much more. So what's scaring people? They're the monsters. I think that's pretty much what it is. People are kind of often scared of letting go of control, of letting go of that carefully cultivated organisational voice, because they're worried about what people will say. They're worried that they can't, if they let the conversation happen, that they can no longer control it. It's an understandable fear, I think. It's not one that I feel myself. I feel that that's the excitement for me. The letting go of control is the excitement. The putting the conversations out there, the opening up, all of those things are what is exciting to me. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm in any way kind of bashing any other arts organisations, because I'm really not. I think this is a journey that we all have to go through. And I think Fabrica have taken some steps in that direction, but we're not there by any means. This is a slow, I think, quite difficult process in some ways, because it's about organisational change, and it's about changing the way that arts organisations have been doing things forever, pretty much. So when I think about the way that arts organisations, or in fact any organisations, have often communicated in the past, this is the image that comes into my head. There's a really nice, potentially quite tasty pie there, and there's this very controlled, singular voice that comes out of the pie, that tells you what's happening in the pie, that tells you that the pie's really tasty and you should really come check it out. Which is great, and that works to a certain extent. But things have changed, really, and when I think about how arts organisations should be communicating, this is when I have a kind of nursery rhyme moment, and this is the image that I think of: 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie. And actually, what this represents is the pie, the organisation, opened up, And some of those people are in the pie, some of them are circling around, some of them are hanging out nearby, some of them are nipping in for a taste and nipping out again. But all those voices are talking about your organisation. And all those voices have power, and all those voices are incredibly valid. What I'm fascinated by is how much more powerful that can be than that single voice. Because this represents, not a very good image because they're all blackbirds, but actually this represents real diversity. It represents the opportunity for so many different people to talk about and engage with your organisation. That's an incredibly, incredibly powerful thing. It's about breaking down barriers. It's about challenging that idea of elitism, that you can't talk about us unless you can talk in a certain way. We won't invite you in unless you've got an arts degree and you can use art speak, which doesn't work for me because I don't understand it. Social media allows those voices into our organisation, and I think that's incredibly important, and I think that's incredibly challenging, and I think it's incredibly exciting. So, like I say, Fabrica is kind of making steps in that direction. But my challenge to you is the arts organisations that you're part of, that you're an audience for, if you're an artist, the arts organisations that you work with, challenge them about how they communicate and ask them questions and engage with them and push them in this direction, because I think ultimately the arts will be a better place because of it. I think social media has the opportunity, if we embrace it and if we go together down this road, it has the opportunity to really change things, to really engage people with what we do, with the power of what we do and the transformative power that it can have. I think everybody in this room will agree the transformative power that the arts can have for people. And this is the best, most exciting opportunity, and I feel like incredibly privileged to be right here, right now, and to be able to engage in this way. So my challenge is to you, to do that with the arts organisations that you love, that you support, that you want to see around in 20, 30 years. They need to be having these conversations now, they need to be making these kind of changes and just starting down that road. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. There is supposed to be Greek mythology, so I'm just going to put him up. This is Argos Panoptes, who is, well, he seems to be several characters in Greek mythology, and he was famous for having 1,000 eyes on his body. And I was trying to kind of work him in somewhere into the presentation about, you know, and he never slept. He always had eyes open, so he always knew what was going on. And I was trying to work him in somewhere, but he didn't quite fit. I'm just going to leave him there as a kind of final visual for you. And he was turned into a peacock at some point.